Just the other day, I posted the first half of my top 50 anime of the decade list, and the reaction to it was pretty similar to the reaction I usually get from all of my different lists, be they best of the year or favorites lists or anything like that, which is that the people who follow me very actively, who keep up with my reviews, who maybe keep up with my MAL scores, they are usually not very surprised. They might be a little surprised by the order of the list, how some things have switched around over time, just from me having thought about it on my own without really expressing those updated opinions in any kind of video form, because who knows what random thoughts might go through my head about a show over the years. Nonetheless, they pretty much know what to expect. They know what's going to be on the list. But most spectators looking at the list, either they're going to be asking, how did you leave off X or Y show that they really like, which is to be expected. But particularly with my lists, you get people asking, like, how could you have this show on your list but lower than this show? And how can even somebody who likes one of those like the other one? How can Gochiusa be at number 26 and I have nothing deep to say about it, whereas, way back at the later 40s is a bunch of shows that would be considered more classy, Tatami Galaxy, let's say, treated at number 40. The answer really comes down to how I think about why I like shows, and I really kind of burst this wide open for myself when I made the video on experiential versus contemplative media. It's in my Essential Digibro playlist, I think towards the start, but I talk about this idea that there are two different ways that you can enjoy media. You can enjoy the experience of consuming it in the moment, or it might be that you enjoy thinking about it. You enjoy the lingering effect it has on you. Obviously, ideally, both are high impact. Hopefully you watch something that not only is exciting in the moment, but keeps you thinking about it for the rest of your life, potentially. I think that a lot of people have a tendency to really favor the contemplative, funnily enough, not so much in the sense that it's thought-provoking, as in it causes them to think about all kinds of deep concepts, but that it just causes them to keep thinking about it. They keep thinking about these scenes, these moments that really struck a chord with them, and they consider those moments to be unforgettable, either because of the strength of a visual or the power of a symbol or a line of dialogue or, a story beat, whatever it is. Whatever made that thing memorable, that is thought-provoking. But, the experience of actually seeing it, that was a different kind of thing. And there are some things that are a blast to watch, but don't really linger in your mind. I would think of Promare as an example of this for me, where it's a ton of fun to watch Promare, especially in my opinion. The start of the movie I think is the best part, but it has a big, huge, epic finale that's fun to watch, but like most of what the story explores, most of the story beats, all of it is stuff that has already been done in other works by Studio Trigger on a much deeper level, that if I'm going to think about these concepts, I'm most likely going to think about those other shows. Promare, it's not that it has nothing original in it, but it's pretty, very specific, splitting hairs, basically, between the story of that and, Kill La Kill and Gurren Lagann. So that's a film that I would consider to be highly experientially satisfying, but not very thought-provoking. Whereas there are other shows that maybe are extremely thought-provoking, but you don't even really remember what they looked like. I can think of some shows where, even Babylon, like when I came back to that show, even though I remembered that it had inventive visuals and I could even remember a few of the specific tricks that were used in the show, generally I don't consider the designs that memorable or the overall aesthetic of the show. And so when I came back to watch the second batch of episodes for Content, I had to take a second to adjust, oh yeah, this is what the show looked like, even though I could vividly remember a lot of what had happened in the first 4 episodes, because the show is crazy fucking intense with all these plot twists and memorable thematic moments and stuff like that. It is thought-provoking content first and foremost, and has continued to be, which is why on the Content channel. Best Guy Ever and I have had these extremely long discussions about the show. So I don't necessarily consider one or the other of these two things to be preferable because I can remember them both. And it's kind of like, yes, something can be so thought-provoking that I would rate it higher than other stuff that has, maybe a better balance of being thought-provoking and experientially great, just because like the thoughts that I got from this one are so much more interesting. However, there's also a chance that something is, the exact opposite. It's just so, like a Rintaro film, like X 1999. Like, I love that fucking movie because it's just beautiful. And all the stuff that happens is trippy and fucking crazy and awesome. But the story is, hyper condensed, barely makes sense, hard to follow, and it's a clusterfuck. It doesn't really cause me to think about it that often, aside from some of the cool deaths that happen in the movie, which I used to think about all the time when I was younger. But like when I watch the movie now, I'm just having a great time experiencing it. Same goes for something like Urotsuki Doji. I barely remember anything that happened in Urotsuki Doji. I still gave it a 10 out of 10 because I just enjoyed the experience so much. So when I think about something like Gochi-Yusa, is the Order a Rabbit, which I put at number 26. And granted, I'm gonna probably say this somewhere in the videos themselves, but like the honorable mentions are pretty much interchangeable with most of the back like 80% of the list. I would say that the any of them could have been in any spot essentially. Like they're all shows that I like around the same amount. I just kind of followed my gut. I thought, like, how much excitement did I feel for this show over this decade? Like, when it came out, how hype was I? Where did I rank it on my previous lists? Did I continue to think highly of it over time? Was my opinion diminished at any point? Did I think it was a rocky road throughout the show? And there are some shows, like, for instance, Nozaki-kun, the reason that show didn't make the list as opposed to Momokuri, even though I can remember higher highs in Nozaki-kun, I also remember lots of parts that I didn't find that funny. Certain characters that I had completely forgotten about or don't consider good at all. So while there's certain things in Nozaki-kun that I think are great, I remember the overall experience of Momokuri being even better. And while I don't remember everything about the show, I don't remember most of the individual details, I do remember the overall arc of the characters, their how they started, where they ended up, and how their relationship changed in the process of getting there. And that was a powerful arc. And as much as I love like the scene of Nozaki-kun and I don't even remember the girl's name on the bike in the first episode, or even the ending, the tease, like, or the part where the two guys are playing the visual novel together. There are some like legendarily funny moments in that show, but like, those things are great, but like they're great experiential moments, but it's not the whole of the show. And Momokuri was always enjoyable, and it had an interesting central, romance to it. So that's why I ended up choosing that over the other show. Meanwhile, moving further down the list again to something like Gochi-Yusa, I remember watching that the first time with my younger brother Shade, who also loves Moe and has, cute girl shit all over his fucking room. And so the two of us watched Gochi-Yusa, and we enjoyed it. And then I watched it with May. I haven't watched the whole thing with her. In fact, I still haven't even seen most of season 2. I only saw the first couple episodes. And there's a movie I haven't watched. I'm pretty behind on it. But, like, both times that I watched it with, family, I had a great time. It was a super adorable show. It was heartwarming. It was fun to watch. I loved the setting. I loved the character designs. I liked the voice acting. I like the way that the chemistry between the characters, the color palette, just everything about the show is a pleasant watch. No, I cannot tell you what happens in Gochi-Yusa. I have no fucking idea. Like, episode by episode, I remember glimpses. I remember, like, vague scenes in my mind. I remember the OP and ED better than anything in the show. I mean, the OP was on my iPod since 2014, so I've heard that shit plenty of times. But, like, the show itself it's not as though I watched it a bunch of times. It's just that the times I watched it, I remembered having a great experience with it. And I know I put it on one of my favorites lists before. I did put it lower down. I think that some of the stuff that I put, that I put behind it on this list, but it had just left a really strong impression on me, especially as a show that just had some of the strongest character designs. And I understand that, like, obviously these designs don't appeal to everybody. And I'm not even talking about, this is not like a lolly thing, because I don't consider these characters sexual at all. They're just adorable, and I love, like, the color design, the cohesiveness of all their designs, the theming around cafes and restaurants, or coffee shops, and tea restaurants is what tea cafes? I don't know what they're called. But, the theming around all of that creates a strong sense of design throughout the whole show. Lots of memorable characters who, like, if I was going to buy little trinkets of anime, like, this is a show I would go for right away, just because it looks great, and it's fun to watch with other people who I know who also enjoy cute things. So, like, that's a case of, like, pretty high-level experiential media for me, with not a lot of intellectual content, but I remember a lot of shows I enjoyed for similar reasons, like Comic Girls, like, what's the other one I mentioned in that segment? Stella no Maho, like, some of the other cute girl shows that other people enjoyed. And, like, I understand that some people, might not have blinked an eye if I had put Non Non Biyori there as opposed to Gochiusa, but I didn't find that show that funny. And I didn't like the character designs as much. I didn't like the setting as much, as good as I think the setting in that show is. I didn't like the way it was written, animated, directed, like, as much. I just think that Gochiusa is a better product overall. But that's just how I feel. Obviously, different people have different tastes. But I just think it's really funny that, that show, I think there's, like, such a following for it that there's plenty of people who would be like, oh, yeah, no, not Biyori at number 26. But, like, Gochiusa, which hasn't really had any popularity in the West the way that Non Non Biyori has, it's pretty popular in Japan. Obviously, it got a movie. Like, it's a fairly successful cute girls show that I don't think the Western fandom has given that much respect to outside of people who are hardcore into, who are basically, like, closer to the Japanese community than they are to the American one, I guess. That's just a general summation of, like, why my choices may seem the way that they are. It might be that, like, when you get to the very top, like, if we're talking about a show like Psycho Pass, where I really enjoy the experience of watching the show, but even more than that, the characters are, like, such good templates for discussing the social paradigms that they represent, I guess, that I've thought about it probably more than any other show, So even though it might not be, like, literally as thought-provoking as something like Ghost in the Shell in terms of, like, the number of ideas it touches on, I've thought about it a lot, and I love watching it. So, like, obviously it's going to be way high up on the list. Log Horizon, again, a show that, like, the experience of watching it isn't even always as good as something like Psycho Pass, but thinking about it is even more engaging because it's even more sprawling. There's even more ideas and characters. So, I probably would consider that to be an even more intellectually stimulating show than Psycho Pass, even if Psycho Pass is probably a better viewing experience. So, I don't actually know which one I ranked above the other one when we get to part 2 of the list, but I guess we're all going to find out together. So stick around to the channel. If you want to support me, do so via all the links and stuff in the description. If you want to see me talking about currently airing shows, I'm doing that on the Content channel with Best Guy Ever. I'm probably not doing it here anymore. This channel, the formats that I tried to do for watching continuing shows over the last couple of years, I've tried a bunch of different formats. None of them really worked. The Content formula works. It works because there's 2 of us. We're accountable to one another to some extent. We, we can bounce off of each other to have more solid discussions, and we're only covering the episodes in like 4-episode chunks. It's just the perfect amount that there's always something to talk about. You get a balance of stronger and weaker episodes, or you might not even notice which ones are stronger or weaker because you're not really paying that much attention to it as like an individual episode, but just a continuation of the story. I think it's a great format, and I would like to, if I'm going to do seasonals, like that's the way to do it. It's clearly the way. So, we're covering Blade of the Immortal, we're covering Babylon, we're covering Cautious Hero and Beastars, all every 4 episodes on that channel. We're covering the new season of Rick and Morty as well, and whatever else happens to pop up. We're going to be doing Interspecies Reviewers, the manga, I think, next. So, go subscribe to that and everything else and all that shit. There's stuff on the screen. You know what to do.